Hey everybody, I'm Scott and welcome back to the Wild Digest. Today I'm going to be talking about what I read for Rocket Summer for this year. If you're watching way in the future, it's 2025. So I'm going to want to kind of go over the stuff that I read, why I read it, and what successes and failures I had. And there's really only one failure. We'll get to that in a moment. So, at the outset of Rocket Summer, I had posted on my blog and on my social media accounts that I was only going to read stuff that had been reprinted by Armchair Fiction. Reason being is I have a few of them on my shelf, and I thought it would be a nice way to hit all of the weekly assignment points that had been established by Michael K. Vaughan. Week one was the origins of science fiction up through the 1930s. Week two is the 1940s. Week three was the 1950s. And there was a week four, but he really didn't drift into that. I kind of thought, well, I could sort of read additional 1950s stuff and maybe some early 1960s stuff before the sort of new wave of science fiction hit back in the sort of mid to late 60s. So that was the plan. I picked six of the Armchair Fiction books and made sure the dates were all correct, organized them accordingly, and I actually did post a graphic. I'll share it right now. That showed what my original plan was to read all six of these doubles, which would have been a total of 12 books, 12 novels. Fail. Bring down the fail hammer. I only wound up reading essentially 5.5 novels. July wound up being pretty busy for me. The last week of July, where I was supposed to be reading all this extra stuff, that was San Diego Comic-Con. There was nothing I could do. I also had a big work project start up, so I was spending a lot of time writing. My main publisher was launching a Kickstarter, and I had to do a whole bunch of behind-the-scenes work for that. So July wound up being a little busier than I had originally planned. So I only got through, as I say, about 5.5 novels. And I'm going to go over them, and I'm going to explain what happened and why there's a half in that stack. And I don't know, by me, I'll reach out to you guys and see if you think I should actually finish that half. So we'll go in order. The very first thing I read was Voyage of the Asteroid. And this was by Lawrence Manning. It's from the 1930s. I think it was 32. Voyage of the Asteroid. And one thing I want to show off is these Armchair Fiction doubles are very cool. If you've never seen them before, they are a modern I don't know if it's modern because it's all reprinted stuff. They are a newly printed version of sort of an ace double. So somehow Armchair Fiction is getting the rights to a lot of this stuff. I'm sure there's a public domain issue, but maybe they are acquiring the rights in other ways through some of the magazines that have gone defunct and things like that. But they produce these doubles. They look remarkably like ace doubles, but they are trade paperback size, or Outlaw Bookseller would say B format, I think. They are, as far as I can tell, print on demand because they have that sort of weird little barcode thing in the back. But they're good quality paper. They are not back to back. You don't flip the books. They are just, you read one and then you sort of roll into the next one. So it's sort of the latter day, because I think Ace did that in their later years. But there's still some great stuff, and they have published a heck of a lot of these. They've done a lot of science fiction. They've done some Lost World, Lost Race books, several of those, some mysteries, and some horror and some collections, a whole variety of things. I'll make sure I put the link to their site down below. The site's a little wonky. It does feel like something from the 1990s, and it's a little difficult to navigate. Sometimes you punch in an author's name or a title, and the book will not come up. But if you dig around, you'll find what you need. They do have sales on there occasionally. I know the owner of the company highly recommends ordering through Amazon because then you can at least get free shipping. I've actually found a couple on eBay as well that were discounted for a variety of reasons. So they're really neat. If you get them, they're fun because, their spines all match up. They do look like ace doubles to some extent. It's a nice thing to collect. They run about $12.95 retail. So they're a tad pricey for some of the stuff, but I think it's kind of worth it, and I have a few of them. I quite enjoy them. So let's go back to what I was reading. So the first thing I read was Voyage of the Asteroid from 1932. This is the first of two asteroid stories. There's another one called The Wreck of the Asteroid, which I do not have, but Armchair has also republished that as well. And this was sort of a fun, very retro, very naive story. It's naive in the purest sense. A story about three guys who take a rocket up to Venus. And interestingly, the rocket is actually funded by a multimillionaire. So it's not a government thing. It's not some space agency. It's just a rich guy who builds a rocket. They take this rocket called the Asteroid up to Venus, and lo and behold, on Venus they find, right on the cover there, dinosaurs. There's T-Rexes, there's Brontosaurus-like dinosaurs or pteranodons. They also find these little diminutive lizard people, and they have some adventures up there, and then they go home. That's pretty much it, but it was enjoyable. It has an excessive amount of cooking and eating. I don't know why. There are multiple scenes of them making food on their rocket with ovens and very primitive equipment. But it's silly, it's light, it's pure. As I say, 1932, so it's just sort of a early era space adventure. And I want to pick up the sequel to read it. I think they go to Mars in the second one. So that was the first book I read, Voyage of the Asteroid, 1930s. Now I have to bounce around here. The second one I read was, that's 43. I tried to read them in order. 41, here we go. This one, The Liquid Man. Now, this is by Bernard Guilford, who actually went on to write for a variety of anthology shows like Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and I don't think he wrote any Twilight Zones, but he wrote for some of the other shows like that. And so this story, short novel, is interesting because it's more horror story than it is science fiction. But it is science fiction in the sense that it involves a mad scientist. So in a nutshell, the story is about a mad scientist who really is mad, who makes himself into a form of sort of liquid water so that he can kill his lover, who's having an affair with his brother, so he also kills his brother. This happens on the first few pages of the story, and but he never comes back. He never comes back from being liquid water. He's always liquid water. And he goes nuts, and it's sort of in a weird way a pastiche, or it's similar to The Invisible Man in some regards. So he loses his mind, he goes crazy, he kills a lot of people. He actually kills a kid, which is pretty horrible. And the story, the protagonist is a detective, a police officer, I think he's a detective, who's investigating these murders, and the whole point is just trying to track down the Liquid Man and defeat him. And it winds up being Mother Nature takes care of that in the end. Well, half. There's another bit of revenge which gets taken out on him. Now, it was okay. As I say, it's very much a horror story versus a science fiction story. Guilford, the author, was so enamored of this, inexplicably, that in the 1960s, I think it was 1969, he actually wound up writing a sort of a reworking of it, again titled The Liquid Man, and it was a full novel with I guess a hint of elements from this particular story. This one was published in a magazine. I have a copy. I will read it at some point, and I'm going to do a compare and contrast and see how much has changed. I think it's a radically different story, and I think it's probably maybe more tragic in the later novel, but we'll see, because this one isn't really tragic because the Liquid Man of the story is just a nut. So that was The Liquid Man. If you do get this volume, the other side has a Fritz Leiber story, You're All Alone. So that's pretty cool. All right, then we jump ahead a little bit to The Ice Queen, and this one is by Don Wilcox. This one from 1943 is a Lost Race, Lost World story, as they call it. It's about an expedition to the Arctic, which is being funded by a really entitled unpleasant woman whose husband went missing about 5 years previous. She half is trying to find out what happened to him, but the other half is she believes that there's a stash of valuable furs somewhere in the Arctic that he put there, and she wants to get those and to make money, which is kind of a weird side story. But the main character is an artist who's brought on board the ship, and he accompanies her on this expedition to the Arctic to illustrate what they see and what they witness, and to draw people on board the boat. One thing that's nice about this is that while it was written in 43 or published in 43, it's set in the 1800s. So you don't have to worry about reading it and being concerned with, modern day tech being a little goofy because it's from the 40s. There's none of that. It's a retro story. It's an adventure story from the 1800s. I really, really like this one quite a bit. They eventually do see this woman, the Ice Queen, who is depicted in this painting very accurately to the story. And that is exactly what they see. She is riding this giant white ice tiger. And then this leads them to discovering an under ice civilization that's been there. I hit the mic there. An under ice civilization that's been there for thousands of years. And the queen actually believes that she's 10,000 years old, but you kind of see there's a little loophole in this story. It's fun. The protagonist, of course, falls in love with the queen, and they live happily ever after, I guess. So that one was fun. I really enjoyed that one. Again, from 1943. All right, jump ahead. What do we got here? We got 52 and 54. So 52 is on the flip side of the Ice Queen, and that is this one, Sargasso of Lost Starships. This is by Poul Anderson. This one was interesting. It's very dark. It's about an exploration into a dark nebula, the heart of which has a planet. And what's kind of neat about it is that it has sort of a modern take on certain things. When the story starts out, our hero is drunk, he's belligerent, he's very much against the government that is in charge of the ship that he's aboard. He has a companion, a little bit of a primitive thing. He refers to it as his slave, but it's an alien, a big burly Chewbacca-like alien. And he guides this ship into this dark nebula to this planet. Well, come to find out, he's been there before. He actually sort of fell head over heels in love with this alien that lives on that world. They have psychic powers, the aliens on that planet, and can do really horrific things. There's a big battle that ensues because their ship crashes, and they have to go into the city to try to hopefully find a means of escaping. It's very bloody. It's very violent. And unfortunately, not a lot happens. They get there, they crash, they have a lot of battles. They get to the city, they find a ship, and they escape. So that was Sargasso of Lost Starships. It's kind of a brief one, if I remember. Yeah, it's like 70 pages, so it's a quick one, quick read. But Poul Anderson, not the top of his game. I think he's a fantastic writer, but it was fine for what it was. So that was another one from, what year was that? That was 52. Then I jumped to 1954, Revolt of the Outworlds. Speaking of violent, this is by Milton Lesser. These all were published in various pulp magazines and science fiction magazines of the time. This particular story came out in 54. This one is interesting. It starts out with a revolt. You follow the son of this one very important leader who has died, and there are some factions that are loyal to him and others that are very much not loyal to him. And it's all about manipulating him to try to seize control of, I mean, it's sort of like an empire. And he escapes to Earth. One thing that was kind of cool that I liked was there was a system where they draw water through a black hole from another planet. And that winds up being the undoing of some of the bad guys in this in horrific ways. There's some cool spacewalk scenes, a little bit of intrigue. It was good. I like this one. Again, it was a very short one. It was only 68 pages, but that was a fun one. Revolt of the Outworlds, Milton Lesser, and that's on the flip side of the Voyage of the Asteroid. I don't know why Voyage of the Asteroid doesn't have Wreck of the Asteroid on the back, but there you go. The last one, which would be my half, is Shadow on the Moon by Joe Gibson. I know very little about this. I know very little about the author. Let's put it that way. And it's backed with Armageddon Earth. I am, oh gosh, 51 pages in. It is an 86-page story. So I am more than halfway done. But I don't know if I can continue. What winds up happening is, first of all, it's a very deceptive cover because what that is a dream that we actually see played out. It's accurate. I mean, there's a blue alien and a woman who's in peril and a guy watching from a doorway, and all this stuff happens in the story in a dream. The story itself is sci-fi because it's set in a future, and it doesn't even seem like an exceptionally far future that involves high-speed helicopters. It's basically at this point, and again, there could be this crazy twist coming up that I haven't foreseen. But right now, it's just a political thriller. It's just an espionage thing. There's some assassination attempts. They rough up some guy to try to get some information. There are rival companies trying to steal the plans to make some new machine and fuel. I am not into this. For some reason, it is just not clicking for me. But as I said, I'm almost done with the damn thing. So do I just sit down and like bang out those remaining pages so I can at least say it's done, or do I just DNR this and say it's time to move on? I don't know. But unfortunately, that was my half, and those are my 5.5 books that I read this month. They do describe these as being novels, even though some of them are some 70 or 80 pages long. But yeah, so a nice little stack of stuff. And that was my rocket summer. So I rocketed through a few novels. Hooray! But some fun stuff. I'm not gonna complain. I had a good time reading them. I'm likely going to pick up more of those Armchair Fiction collections if I can. A couple of them that sort of set me off on the path, I found it actually on the shelf of a bookstore, a used bookstore local to me. So that's how I first discovered them. And that was only, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months ago. So that is it. That is what I read for Rocket Summer. Kind of a fail. I don't know, halfway mark. And but we got some stuff coming up because as we roll into August, I am going to be doing Book Trek. There's a few reasons that I'm doing Book Trek versus Garb August. I may have mentioned it in my previous video. But one of the reasons is that next week I'm going to be at Trek to Vegas. So I'll be in Las Vegas for what effectively is the largest Star Trek convention in the world. And that should be a lot of fun. And it certainly will get me in the right mindset for doing Book Trek. Number two, I haven't read Star Trek novels in years. And I'd like to dip into some that I never read before. I've already got a couple of TOS original series ones on the shelf that I'm going to be reading. I've already started the first, and I'm going to pick up one of the new Strange New Worlds novels because they've done 3 so far, and I'm going to get the most recent one that just came out, and I'll be reading that. That'll probably be what I'll wrap the month up with. And then 3, did I say 3? 3. As I mentioned before, I play role-playing games and write role-playing games, and I am currently playing an on-again, off-again Star Trek Adventures campaign. So that's all fresh in my mind too. So, and of course, Star Trek: Strange New Worlds is running right now. That just launched, premiered a couple weeks ago, and Starfleet Academy is coming up. So there are lots of buzz about Star Trek. So I figured, why don't I ride that wave for the month of August and do Book Trek? So that's what I'm going to be talking about over the next few weeks. I'm sure also I'll be dropping in to do a distant June on the Range review because I want to go over some of the stuff I read for June in that regard. And I've got a few other things on deck, but coming up next, we will be talking about Book Trek and some of my more detailed plans about that. Hopefully, I'll be talking about the first book I've read and completed by then. So that is it. Once again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. And I'll see you on the flip side. Take care.